In the 15 years after China entered the WTO, real wages went down. So wages went down by more than prices, as we thought these cheap goods were going to revolutionize America. In fact, it was the opposite. Welfare went down. We had Angus Deaton write a whole book about the deaths of despair that were related to this. And so I think we're very optimistic about the fact that people are going to have more money in their pockets and that they're going to have a higher standard of living.
There are plenty of sycophants in Donald Trump's administration who eagerly defend his most indefensible action. But when it comes to his most questionable economic move, no one has been more eager to go on national TV and distort the truth than Howard Lutnick. That's exactly what he did today, but when a Democrat called him out on one of his lies, particularly regarding the tariffs, Lutnick didn't take it very well. We'll dive into all of this shortly, but before we do, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to me. Now, before we get to Lutnick, let's first look at another dishonest figure from the Trump administration who was recently caught fabricating job numbers.
In the 15 years after China entered the WTO, real wages went down. So wages went down by more than prices, as we thought these cheap goods were going to revolutionize America. In fact, it was the opposite. Welfare went down. We had Angus Deaton write a whole book about the deaths of despair that were related to this. And so I think we're very optimistic about the fact that people are going to have more money in their pockets and that they're going to have a higher standard of living.
Well, right now, I mean, wealth has disappeared from the market. And as you know, the fears of a global recession or a United States recession have increased even among business supporters, business leaders who support President Trump.
Well, what you're seeing is that the survey data is what we call is soft data. The survey data has been showing that people are anxious about the changes a little bit, but the hard data has been really, really strong, as you know. In fact, if you looked at the latest jobs report, it was way, way above even what I expected. And so what's happening is that people are racing to create jobs and to make stuff here in the U.S. If they make it in the U.S., they're not going to pay any tariff, and there's an explosion in the labor market that's really surprised me, right? And so you can't have a lot of new employment and then have like a recession. It's just,
but you know, the jobs data was from before the Liberation Day. I mean, there's before all these global.
Well, not all those, but also it was clear, I think, that the jobs data were anticipation of something happening, something big. That would be only rational for firms to think that way.
All right, Kevin Hassett, thank you so much for your time this morning. Really.
There are supposedly countless goals behind Donald Trump's tariff plan. They claim it'll somehow lower prices. It hasn't. Or that interest rates will drop. They haven't either. But the main selling point is that it's supposed to bring American jobs back. That's why Kevin Hassett was referencing outdated job numbers, as Jake Tapper pointed out, because they know the realities that people are losing their jobs. Layoffs are happening, job offers are being rescinded, and
we have the capacity to do it. If you've seen, an auto plant these days, these are beautiful plants. These new modern plants are amazing, and the jobs they create for our American workers are amazing jobs, and that's what Donald Trump is focused on, bringing those jobs and those factories back to America and employing American workers. He's on it, and he's going to bring them back.
The president also said there's going to be a transition cost, transition problems. I mean, we are going to see higher prices in America as well. It's not like you can open a factory tomorrow to build iPhones or to make sneakers, shoes. I mean, we buy a lot of shoes in this country. 99% of them are made elsewhere. I mean, are we going to become a nation of cobblers again? I mean, this is going to mean higher prices, isn't it?
I mean, have you seen, I don't necessarily think so. I think the idea is that we can manufacture here in America. As I said, I saw Panasonic, the battery company, right, Japanese company. They built an amazing factory in Kansas, which they're opening now. They put it in the ground when Donald Trump was the president. It's just finishing now. 4,000 new jobs built from what they made deals with the community colleges nearby and all the local community and the local university. They trained people for this. 4,000 high-tech jobs in Kansas. That is what's coming back to America. You're going to see that.
It's honestly baffling. If Howard Lutnick is denying that prices will go up, even though Donald Trump himself has admitted they would, and even Lutnick previously acknowledged there would be a little bit of pain, then what's the point of buying American products? The whole logic behind tariffs is that you raise the cost of foreign goods, so people stop buying them, switch to American alternatives, which boosts U.S. companies and leads to more investment in domestic manufacturing. But that entire chain of events hinges on prices actually going up. So how could they not? Why wouldn't they? It's completely absurd. What's shocking to me is that these people can't even stay consistent with their own talking point. They keep repeating the same lie, yet they can't get on the same page when it comes to this. That's how flawed this so-called plan is, if we can even call it a plan. It's so poorly thought out that even MAGA loyalists can't spin it properly. And that's exactly the kind of dishonesty Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's been relentless in tearing down Trump's tariff policies, called out in Howard Lutnick during this clip I want to show you.
Massachusetts. Senator, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. You have called yourself a big supporter of tariffs. You've been a staunch critic of unfair trade practices from China. Less than a year ago, you praised President Biden's decision to slap tariffs on Chinese goods because he was, in your words, quote, standing up for American workers, unquote. So specifically on China, can you detail what exactly you would be doing differently than President Trump?
Well, let's keep in mind, tariffs can be an important tool in the toolbox when used in targeted ways. But right now what we've got is chaos and corruption. Donald Trump has imposed a tariff on everyone, everywhere, on all products. That's the 10% tariff. Of course, it was much higher earlier in the week. And now in this trade war with China that basically tries to shut down all trade. And then, right out in plain view, as if the chaos weren't enough, he adds a nice layer of corruption for everyone to see, and that is a special deal for his CEO donor, and that is an exception to the China deal for iPhones. Look, here's the problem. You can't get an economy strong and moving forward when it's loaded with chaos and corruption. Investors will not invest in the United States when Donald Trump is playing red light, green light with tariffs and saying, oh, and for my special donors, you get a special exception. People make investment decisions that are years into the future. If they're going to build a factory or they're going to rehab an old factory or buy a bunch of new tools. And right now with Donald Trump, nobody can figure out what the rules will be 5 days from now, much less 5 years from now. That's a real hit to our economy and to developing more manufacturing here in the United States.
So on Wednesday, the president announced a pause on most of the tariffs,
telling us there's a problem and the warning lights are flashing red. You know, though, Jake, the part I remember from 2008 is what a recession means. Family by family, small business by small business. You know, I watched back in 2008 when 10 million people lost their homes, when millions of people lost their jobs, when millions of people saw their savings wiped out. I also watched when little tiny businesses got turned upside down and never had a chance to recover. Recessions are something that people like to talk about. They talk about the stock market. They talk about the big numbers that move. But the reality is they are experienced one family, one small business at a time, and they are hard to recover from. So I am worried that the continued chaos, the continued corruption, the fact that Donald Trump is just out there shooting wildly is pushing our economy in the wrong direction, and the people who are going to feel it most are not the wealthy traders. It's going to be the families and the small businesses who get wiped out.
So given all the chaos, given the fact that the president's approval ratings are declining, given all the uncertainty in the market, why do you think the Democratic Party has such a low approval rating? I would think this would be an opportunity for Democrats to rise and present an alternative, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. And as you know, your party's approval ratings are historically low.
You know, look, the way I look at this is that Donald Trump has created a lot of chaos in his first 3 months in Washington. Remember, he started out, made the promise that on day one, he would lower prices for American families. Those were his words, on day one. By the time he gets 2 months in and he's told that his tariff plans will increase costs, his answer was he couldn't care less. I think that the Democrats have really coalesced around the central message. Our job is to fight to lower those costs for American families. Our job is to fight against a Republican Party that not only doesn't care about those families, but is working hard right now while all this chaos is going on to give more tax cuts to billionaires and billionaire corporations, and to cut access to Social Security, to cut veterans services, to cut health care for little babies and for seniors in nursing homes, to cut help for our public schools so that class sizes get bigger, so that little kids with special needs can't get an aid, so that after-school programs are canceled. Look, I think our secret super-duper strategy is just tell the truth about what's going on. The American people will see pretty clearly who's fighting for the billionaires and who's fighting for them.
Senator Elizabeth Warren from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, thanks for joining us.
The tariff policy makes no real sense unless you view it through a lens outside of traditional logic. Normally, you'd expect the President of the United States to implement policies aimed at improving the country. But that's not what Donald Trump is doing. His goal seems to be projecting a tough guy image on the global stage, even though we know that image is more fiction than fact. At the same time, Trump is focused on serving the interests of his billionaire friend. Now you might wonder, how is he helping them when they've lost billions in market value? The answer lies in the loopholes, like the tariff carve-outs he's handing out to select companies. Apple, for example, just got one. And it's no coincidence that Tim Apple, as Trump once called him, donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration and cozied up to him at Mar-a-Lago. Other big corporations are getting similar treatment, while small businesses, the backbone of American employment, are bearing the brunt of the pain. Does Trump care? Of course not. This is textbook corruption, and it extends beyond the White House. Members of the Republican caucus, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are using insider knowledge to buy up stocks and profit off Trump's economic decisions. Meanwhile, regular Americans are losing their jobs, savings, and possibly their home. Trump is out here eating Big Macs, going to UFC events, and crashing the economy. This is all part of a broader pattern of corruption and incompetence, amplified by Trump's clear cognitive decline. And it's dangerous. That's why it's so important for us to keep connecting the dots. Even though some of this may seem obvious, not everyone is paying attention. We have to keep making it clear. This economic disaster is Trump's doing. If Kamala Harris were president, we wouldn't be in this mess, plain and simple. We're going to keep calling this out every single day. And if you support that effort, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you made it all the way to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, take care.